Gateway to Hell leads to a world filled with attention to detail. The Auditor's plans have been disturbed, so now it is time for him to enter the fray. I have discussed the maniac clown, Tricky. I have discussed the ever-reviving protagonist, Hank. Now, I will discuss the main aspects of Versus Auditor, seeing what he brings to the table and the quality of what he brought along. If you enjoy this content and want to see more, please leave a like and subscribe. The art is a fresh coat of paint to the Madness Combat characters. Even for Auditor's Black Flame body, he has a fair amount of detail. The only detail of his face are his eyes, which do well to support the expressions of his poses. To keep his flames moving, he immediately returns to idle when one of those poses ends, and his idle has its own loop outside of the song's BPM. The room is fairly simple, but it still has a lot of detail. The same can be said once we are outside, and Deimos and Sanders fill the space by fighting grunts. Wait, Deimos? Why are you here? No, I'm getting ahead of myself. That matter is for later. Auditor has extra animations to build the atmosphere. Then we are off to the climactic bout. Although he is larger, his figure is the same, so his poses have similar expressions. The scenery is quite meticulous for an open sky and platform. Mag Hank and Sanders are also here as spectators. The second week is between the Auditor and Tricky. Auditor is the same as before, but Tricky has a new look and new poses while still keeping that insane expressiveness. In the chaotic realm of Hell, Auditor has lost his flame, but he still has powers. He uses those to express his frustration towards Boyfriend. We also pay him one last visit in the darkness, getting up close and personal. Despite the change of perspective, his poses use the same ideas as before and adapt them to the new scenery. Across all the songs, the health bar has a new look, supporting the environment and overall impression of the mod. The art creates quite an immersive environment. The soundtrack feels like it followed in the footsteps of Versus Tricky, focusing on the atmosphere. Right from the start, the title screen treats Auditor as a higher power you should not mess with. The game over also gives this impression with Boyfriend's brutal death. The menu creates a feeling of uneasiness, like stepping into a strange dimension. In Cavmophobia, the fear of getting burned is our intro to this boss battle, setting the intense mood while serving as only a warm-up. Supremacy adds a dark tone as the Auditor starts to get annoyed by this game. Gateway is the final phase of the fight, playing to the higher status of the Auditor while maintaining the same dark tone as before. The voices have much more weight compared to the instrumental, but the note spam gets excessive. At this point, you are not playing the vocals, you are playing the instrumental, which means it stops being a song. Onto Tricky's week, Captivity feels like its name, with the guard being a dark angel. There is both an angelic and demonic feeling to this rock song. Unhinged goes heavier on the rock, making the song feel less hopeful. Dissension drowns the hope even further and pushes for more intensity. I think they may have used the wrong spelling for dissension, since this is more of a descent into madness than a disagreement. Tricky's voice is the same one as the Versus Tricky mod. And his vocals become more unstable with each song. Damnation is the dark, hopeless feeling that comes from purgatory. The impression of a higher power returns to describe the hell Auditor is trapped in. The last stop is a remix of Monochrome, fittingly named Audichrome, meshing the vibe of the Auditor with the original instrumental. The aesthetic of the Parish song has been replaced with the deaths of grunts, shifting the mood to work better with the Auditor. His voice is quite something. It pairs with his appearance, fits his character, works well with all the instrumentals, and has a nice sound to it, so it makes for a great voice. Overall, the soundtrack does a great job at playing to each respective concept. The charts that make up the gameplay are fine for what they are. The problems arise from the additional mechanics. Gateway will move your strum notes around, making it harder to focus on what to hit. They will never change the order of the strum notes, but they can overlap one another. Missing Note also did this mechanic, but the strum notes never overlap, making it easier to recognize the overall order. The other problem with this song is the chart itself. It repeats the same, generally easy patterns consistently, likely to compensate for the mechanic's difficulty. I don't think making the pattern easier does much to mitigate the difficulty, but changing the amount of notes certainly would, which is why Missing Note has a fairly easy chart during those verses. To push this difficulty even further, it also changes the scroll direction depending on where the strum notes end up. Again, this is compensated for in Missing Note with the easier chart, but Gateway cannot say the same. You can turn off this aspect, but it does not excuse it. If it is in the mod, it is intentional. Damnation features an interesting variation of a timer-based dodge mechanic. At specific times, you will have to press the spacebar a given number of times over a short amount of time. The game shows you the timer and the number of presses left to complete it. Every instance has a fair time to button press ratio, even when dealing with it while singing. If you fail, you will take so much damage that only full health will save you. The only other mechanic is the jump scare visual in Auditor. This is awful. The only information usable for knowing the timings is visual based, so if the screen is fully obstructed, you only have your memory to help you. Should you play this for the first time, may the heavens bless you. Aside from its problems, the gameplay is quite alright. The writing is the icing on the cake. Auditor's Week has animated cutscenes that tell a charming story, filled with recreated scenes, direct references, and interesting creativity. The only problem here is the inclusion of Deimos. This mod is mostly based around Madness Combat 10, Abrogation. At that point in time, Deimos has already died, so he shouldn't be here. I think the developers were aware of this since he does not appear in Gateway or the cutscene after, but if he was going to appear, he should not have been alive. Tricky's new design makes him more insane through the eyes, which are an explicit reference. The menus have a lot of detail and create a new impression to fit the mod. By completing both weeks, Auditor's sword will crack. You click on this to enter Damnation. Upon beating the song, the sword will break, opening a bright line behind it. With this, you can gain access to a harder version of the song. Simply type "fuck you" on the title screen, and you will sing with little Auditor here. He adds insta-kill notes, but if you manage to beat the song, he appears on the menu. You access Auditor in the same way, but you type this instead. One smaller thing is that the UI will shake when you are at low health, along with Boyfriend having a new idol. The writing encapsulates the world of Madness Combat in every song. That is everything that the Auditor has to offer. Here's a recap of my scores for the mod. Gateway to Hell is a short, immersive mod that focused on building an atmosphere through its attention to detail. Although the gameplay could have been better balanced, it still makes for a worthwhile experience with its mechanics and fairly clean charting. The errors will never slip out of my mind. Feel free to share your thoughts on the mod in the comments below. Until next time.